the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 145, recorded Wednesday, May 28th, 2014. Reporters Roundtable. AVWeek is brought to you by Middle Atlantic Products, who invite you to stop by their new customer-focused website, Middle Atlantic Products, what great systems are built on.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. Hello. With us this week, this is a special. This one, actually, I'm very excited about this because it is taking a lot of time and bribing and a fair amount of kowtowing about the great Red Sox to make this thing happen, says the Cardinal fan. This is my reporter roundtable for InfoComm 2014. So these fabulous people, very talented, that have been covering the industry for a number of years, are going to give us and give you, by extension, their impressions and what you should expect for InfoComm 2014. So we will start with ladies first because my mother raised a gentleman. First up, Margot Douaihy, editor of AV Technology. How are you, ma'am?
Excellent. Great to see you. Great to be here. And thanks for being patient. I know the last time we tried to get this together, we were a little bit busy, but it's just always fun to, share ideas and trade stories. So I appreciate it.
You guys aren't professionals. You don't work for a living or anything, traveling all over the place and crazy stuff. So also with us is Tom LeBlanc. Tom is the editor of Commercial Integrator and the newly minted editor of Tech Decisions. How are you, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. And last but not least, the world's greatest Red Sox fan and my personal nemesis, Craig McCormick, editor-at-large at Commercial Integrator. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. Okay, so when we set this up, we were like, okay, let's just talk about InfoComm. But Harman threw a wrench in our plans. So I've got a bunch of really talented reporters. I'm going to ask you first and foremost. Margot, we'll start with you. What do you think of the Harman AMX deal for the industry or for them as businesses? What does that mean?
Well, I think it's really important to maintain equanimity. I know that there was a lot of interest and excitement on Twitter, of course, and people trading ideas and just wondering what the fallout or the ripple effects would be for our readers who are tech managers and also, of course, the integration community at large. But I think that the acquisition is interesting in terms of market metrics, but it's really important that consolidation isn't new. It's not new to our industry. Barco bought Projection Design last year and bought X2O this year. Panamax bought Furman. We have a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Nortec owns Magenta and TV1. So it's not on its own something to kind of freak out about. And I think it's an essential move in any industry. Much more interesting to me is that both AMX and Harman are interested in more known for their endpoints and control systems. HDMI and AVB are, of course, transport technologies, methods from getting information from one endpoint to the other. So what I want to know is how are these companies going to make better use of the synergies between endpoints? And what are they going to do with proprietary systems versus standards-based? So, that's kind of where we're really interested in looking at right now. And if the question of statistical multiplexing is going to come in, that's what one of our writers, Phil Hippensteel, who's one of our regular columnists, is looking at for an article and some coverage he's going to do at InfoComm. So our endpoint manufacturers like AMX, Harman, Panasonic, Casio trying to figure out which transport technologies are going to survive, because those decisions are actually the decisions that are going to really make an impact on where we're going to be 10 years from now. So we need to figure out, the next move from here. And I think that, of course, AV is really moving towards internet and IP-based eventually. So what does this mean right now for transport, not necessarily the companies as they are existing at this point. So I think that's really what we're looking at. So it's not too big of a deal right now, but what does it mean 5 years from now?
Good points. Tom, for you guys and covering commercial integrator, and what have you heard both from your integrators as well as from your manufacturer folks?
Well, to Margot's points, I would say ditto. Those are all good points. It's just another merger in a way, and we see mergers all the time. And in fact, AMX was already owned by some company, and now they're going to be owned by another different company. I guess the big difference is that, in this case, Harman sells over $1 billion worth of commercial gear. And like Margot said, it'll be interested to see how some of those synergies play out. What I think is really interesting is I can remember back when I worked for CE Pro and I was covering the residential market. I can remember going to CEDIA Expo 2010, and I got an interview with Blake Augsburger. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But back then, he was talking about AVB, and it was so early that I had to look up what AVB meant prior to the interview. And he was kind of talking about how Harman envisions its role evolving, in part by attaching itself to the AVB movement, and how it envisioned Harman being more of sort of the central component of a system, sort of the quarterback of a system. Yeah. And me not being, very smart, I said, well, I can't really picture that. How does that work without an interface? And, in retrospect, maybe Harman always kind of was wondering that as well, trying to figure out, how to bring more of an interface play into that equation if they are in fact going to become sort of the quarterback of a typical AV commercial system. And I don't know, I just kept thinking about that interview back in 2010 when I was learning about all the AMX news last week. But it's just another acquisition, and we'll see what happens, and it'll be interesting because it happened just before InfoComm.
Yeah, absolutely. I was given we had Joe Andrulis on last week's episode of AVWeek, and I gave him crap about I said, you should have saved this for the first day of the show. And he's like, no, So, all right, Mr. McCormick, both Margot and Tom have mentioned this. Harman is a big player in AVB. AMX is fully ensconced in the HD-based T camp. From your standpoint and for your 2 cents, how do you think that's going to play out? How are they going to make those two play nice together, or do you think that one's going to have to take dominance over the other?
Well, I'm sure you remember from InfoComm last year, I met with the AVNU Alliance and the HD-based T Alliance, and they talked about how those two technologies and tools can work together. And I guess this will be a major test of whether that's actually true or not. I haven't necessarily seen any evidence of that in the year since, and I am planning on finding out, kind of how that's progressed when I do go to InfoComm. I'm meeting with both of them again to kind of do, I guess, a year later follow-up essentially on that. So I guess kind of we'll see how that in particular plays out. So
yeah, absolutely.
The other thing, Tim,
go ahead.
Sorry to jump in, but the other thing I thought was interesting. I mentioned how I used to work for a residential publication, and CE Pro, going back a few years, does this brand awareness study every year. And so after the AMX news broke last week, the editor of CE Pro, Jason Nod, and I sat down and we were looking at those brand awareness studies going back to 2005, the year that AMX was last acquired. And we were wondering, I wonder what's gone on in terms of market share, during that time.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because the trend was that Crestron was always far and away the top in automation, in the automation category. AMX didn't really lose market share during that time span. The difference is that Control 4 really emerged as the player that was up there kind of close to Crestron, whereas at the beginning of the time span, AMX was kind of close to Crestron. And it's just interesting, something like this, maybe it makes AMX exciting again, for lack of a better phrase. And by the way, that was a point that was brought up in an excellent column that a publication called AVNation posted today.
Yes,
I've heard of that.
We did not write it. Our good all of our good friends. We all know Dan Newman. Dan wrote a piece for us, and yeah, very good point. It's interesting though that you mentioned the fact that AMX didn't necessarily lose the market share. It was the fact that another company overtook them. Basically, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Control 4 really emerged.
They had a couple though. I mean, right? What was it? Was it InfoComm 2009 in Vegas? They had, was it the Aria Hotel? Yeah. Was a huge Control 4. That was like the big, like holy cow, yeah. It was all Control 4. That was a big year for them. So.
That was like their big push into commercial too.
Yes.
But then they kind of moved away from commercial, and then they kind of came back. So I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to get an update from Control 4. I know they were, last time I talked to them about their plays in the commercial market, they were very focused on developing good apps for commercial integrators to use to leverage their solutions. So it would be interesting to get another update from them on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom, that actually goes to your point about the idea of, the quarterback, but also the face of it, I think. I'm not sure if that's what you were mentioning that point before, but the thing that Control 4 seemed to do in a really successful way was just make it easy to use and have an emphasis on the user interface and just the simplicity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, let's be honest here, that's where most of, if you have any worth in the control segment, you have to have some sort of mobile or tablet-based app. Otherwise, you're not even playing. I mean, seriously. All right, so all three of you will be at InfoComm this year. Margot, we'll start with you. AV Technology. How do you guys cover a show like this? How do you cover InfoComm?
Well, as many espressos as humanly possible.
There is no sleep.
And cardiac arrest and 5-hour energy drinks, cloning oneself. These are all really practical solutions that we employ on a yearly basis. But we actually have a really fun approach this year with our awards because Nube publications cover different markets, but they dovetail, obviously, in really seamless ways. So, for example, SNBC and SCN are sister magazines that focus more on the systems integrator. We're all joining together and doing a best of show award. So we have anonymous judges fanning out and going to judge in a truly anonymous way. So really doing blind judging so that the companies don't know that they're going to look and demo their products. So that's one element of that. So we're joining forces with our sister publications. And also, I just like to make appointments with the companies that I think have had really interesting releases last year, because I think there is a danger in overhyping and overanalyzing InfoComm as sort of this one portent of all industry trends writ large. Instead, I think it's important to look at the companies that had really big headline intros in the last 1 or 2 years, like, for example, the Biamp to Sierra platform, or something of that ilk like Barcode ClickShare, and then looking at seeing how much traction have they gotten, what kind of iterations are they offering, has anyone on that level jettisoned the platform for any other product that supplants it. So kind of taking a larger, more long-term look rather than just going in with this one, that this one show is going to determine what the rest of the industry does for the next 6 months. Because, for example, like Extron isn't there, and they're doing really interesting things also. So I try to take it in stride with other shows like EduCause and Digital Signage Expo, and just putting it together as one piece of this puzzle. So that's just like one way we look at it too.
Do you take a look, because it's an interesting take, because I might steal that actually, because that's a really good take. Do you also take a look at people who got huge headlines, and let's just say that the product hasn't quite shipped yet? I'm not going to call it vaporware, but it just hasn't quite made it out the door yet.
Yeah, and we have a number of companies like that. So, and I think it's really important to be cautious and like my colleagues on this conference call right now, we have to protect our readers from not only vaporware, but claims that, could lead them to take more time than they would ordinarily take doing due diligence or benchmarking, because that's why I think people really like case studies, is they can whether physically go or do a virtual tour and look at the product in the application in situ and see what it's doing for users and what the product life cycle plan might be. So I think it's important to step back and be cautious and not overhype, because there are certainly a few companies that made really big headline intros, and the product will be shipping either this season or next quarter.
Sometime before the Earth is a cold, dark coal mass. Craig McCormick, we'll get to Tom because he does 2 different jobs now, or 3. I lose track of his jobs. Craig, you're from Commercial Integrator. How do you folks handle the show?
I just want to mention, I think some of the 3D products that I saw a couple of years ago will be
shipping
soon. They'll be shipping in a couple weeks, so
right.
Just wait for those.
Thank you. On OLED, no less.
Exactly. So, as far as how we cover the show, we have a bunch of people at the show, and we do have a couple of award ceremonies on Wednesday afternoon for products and for projects that we'll be giving away in our booth at the show on Wednesday. And as far as covering the show, we just try to hit as many of the booths as we can. Obviously we try to hit a lot of the bigger booths, whenever possible, and kind of on your advice and suggestion, I personally have tried to visit some of the booths way in the back, the smaller guys, and kind of see if there's anything that I can unearth back there. I was in line last year with a robot getting lunch, so that was interesting. So, and that was from one of the booths in the back, and I don't know if he'll be in Vegas this year or if we'll see it. All right, so we'll see him again, and maybe he could pick up the tab for me this year.
That would be excellent. Yeah, the technologies, immersive technologies, and if you're at Vegas, just trust me, go to the booth. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that, like I said, you can't ignore the smaller booths, although you can't ignore the bigger booths either, and certainly Microsoft is one that I think everybody is waiting to see. What in the world are they going to be bringing? What are they going to be showing? That sort of thing. There's been a lot of mystery on that, and among all the invitations to go to different booths, I've yet to see one from them. So I think it's interesting how secretive it still is, even a couple weeks before the show.
Can I tell you guys something? And I don't think I could have missed one of your articles. Nobody, including us, have written about this. They have gotten Apple-esque with this stupid booth. Nobody, not InfoComm, nobody knows what they're going to show.
Yeah.
And kudos to them for keeping it under wraps, because this is one thing that Microsoft has never traditionally been good at. This is, Apple, the last few years haven't been good about keeping their iPhone secret. But before then, when Jobs was around, nobody knew anything until he unveiled it. Microsoft has done a very good job about keeping what exactly it is they're showing at InfoComm this year very, very quiet. So, Mr. LeBlanc, what do you do commercial integrator as well as tech decisions? So how are you guys handling it from both fronts?
Well, first on the Microsoft thing, I was really excited. AVISBL had some kind of an event, a global sales event a month or two ago. We sent a reporter down to it, and I'm sure Margot's publication did too. I think there were a lot of reporters down there, and I was excited that Microsoft was going to be there. So certainly, you can ask them about, why did you guys decide to exhibit at InfoComm and what's in the plan? But we didn't get an answer. We got a no comment on that. So, to your point, what the heck? Why is it so secretive? With InfoComm, I like to think of it as if we don't cover InfoComm, the event. What we do is we take the opportunity to be there and, take advantage of the fact that so many people are in one place, which allows you to, draw some conclusions about trends within the industry and talk to a bunch of different people and get some unique perspectives all within a few days. And really, our planning and our reporting on the event is kind of aimed at trying to maximize our ability to do that while also spreading ourselves as thin as we possibly can. And I know nobody cares. Nobody in the audience cares that it's difficult to cover the show as a reporter, but it is.
No, it definitely is. That's one thing that we were fortunate enough and blessed enough. We have a booth, and you guys do too, and it's been an interesting learning experience. Let me put it that way. I work for a programming house, and never had a booth before, and so this is trying to get everybody coordinated, and we're doing more and more at the show this year, and with you guys, and so it's been very interesting. So
it's fun though. It's very rewarding.
Yes.
A ton of content.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna take a short break here. You guys take a drink and hang loose and do whatever you need to do, because we're going to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor today is Middle Atlantic, middleatlantic.com, and their new customer-focused website. Give me a second here, and I can figure out how this technology thing works, and I'll show you their new fancy schmancy website. Got all kinds of really cool things. It's got an easy to navigate design, pages for every single rack model and everything they've got, from the TechPad to the really cool credenzas. They have a live chat feature that is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So the folks out on the West Coast, if you're in the middle of a job or in the middle of a spec, you can still chat with someone up until 8 p.m. Eastern. So that is 5 p.m. Pacific time, if you'd like. And hey, here's one cool thing. If you don't like their website, you can go back to the old one. They do have a revert button here and you can go back to the old one. But yeah, check out the new one if you would, please. Constant videos that are constantly being updated, all sorts of stuff. They've got a section for residential AV, commercial AV, broadcast, security, all sorts of stuff. So check them out. MiddleAtlantic.com. Middle Atlantic, what great systems are built upon. Okay, so we have covered how you guys cover it, the AMX Harman deal. Now we're going to ask really kind of what you guys have been hearing. I'm not asking for anything that you have signed that has been NDA'd and for you to break any laws and get sued by any stretch of the imagination. But from your guys' reporting, what have you been hearing? What do you think? You can talk in veiled references, or if you can name specific people, let's do that too. Craig, we'll start with you. What are you hearing in the bushes that might just knock people's socks off or go, oh wow, that's cool?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much in the bushes it is, but I know 4K was the big reveal kind of last year, and I think you'll see more of those, maybe more at an affordable price or more affordable price than last year, and I think that'll ramp up the interest over the next year in 4K. I know there's still some concern about how much content there is, and it sounds like that concern is starting to be addressed by a lot of the manufacturers as well. So I think that, I don't know if the year of 4K is the right way to put it, but I think it's definitely a technology we're going to see a lot more of in the next 12 months, and definitely on the InfoComm show floor.
Absolutely. Tom, from your perspective and people you're talking to on both sides, what are you hearing that's going to come to the show floor, maybe even beforehand?
Yeah, nobody tells me anything.
There's a thing called 1080p.
I did visit with Crestron a month or two ago, and if the tour of Crestron and our conversations there were any indication, they're going to have an interesting show, and I don't think anybody's surprised by that. It's one of the most crowded booths every year.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I'm excited to see what's going to be going on in the Microsoft booth. Last week, I became a lot more excited about what's going to be going on in the Harman and AMX booths. I just think that'll be an interesting storyline during the show. And like Craig said, 4K, I think, is going to be very interesting at the show. I also think there'll be a lot of smaller companies making product announcements related to software that makes video wall deployment a bit easier. And I think we're going to see a lot of that at the show. That seems to be a trend to watch this year.
Oh, very cool. That's one thing I hadn't heard yet. Margot, from your reporting and from the reporters that are under you, what are you guys hearing that's going to come to the show floor that might be, something that takes people by surprise?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of multi-port HDMI to HD-based T kind of extensions, so the things that make endpoints come together and really make the systems work, and not just for now, but in the future, because a lot of our readers worry about how they can be solvent in the here and now and get the user's needs met and the facility visitors met, whether it's the transportation or higher ed or whatever the vertical market is, but then also scalable to the future. So a lot of the companies like Geffen and Hall Research are going to be really interesting to look at to see how they're approaching that, what their strategies are. IHSE, USA, so companies like that really interest me. And the companies that make those pieces all come together. So I think that's one angle. And then, of course, Vadio just wins the Miscongeniality Award because I think their products just also really focus on interoperability, and they have a new suite of RoboShot cameras, and their Vadio Bridge is really great. Blue Jeans really interests me because, again, they work to glue disparate video conferencing soft codecs together. So I think those are the companies that are going to be really interesting and have some good stories to tell. And of course, Crestron and AMX set a high bar. I think the idea of the show theme of moving AV forward is really interesting. So whether that means, moving more AV devices onto the IP infrastructure or, moving it into more of a mainstream consciousness is really interesting. And looking at the ways the show is going to bring allied trades together, because I know there's a lot of CompTIA training and Bixby training, and also Cisco. Cisco has some specialist training there, and I really like that. I like to see the allied trades coming together in what was, many years ago, or even, 10 years ago, more niche and more siloed, and I think that there's a broader kind of galvanized effort to bring the AV, into more of a mainstream collaborative environment. So that's really cool, and we're really excited about that.
That's interesting. Do you think that's more from the manufacturers pushing us into that way, or is it more from people like InfoComm and CEDIA and the trade organizations that have kind of really done more of the work to get that there?
I mean, I think it's a really great question. I think it's more from the use case. I think it's just the reality that more IT departments are absorbing some AV operations. And, I worked at a university for many years as a systems end user, as a professor. And this one small micro of the macro, but our tech department was the Office of Instructional Technology, and it included IT and AV as a kind of hybrid team. So, that's just one, little way of looking at a larger trend that people are seeing manifest in different ways. So I think it's more from just the evolution of technology. And again, I'm speaking in really broad, very reductionist terms, but I think that's just one of the threads. And I think InfoComm is picking it up and offering more training in the ways that people have been asking for. Because I know a lot of my readers that have more specialty in audio, for example, or just classic performing arts centers, kind of readers like that, want to learn a little bit more about IT networking, multiplexing, subnet masks, etc. So that's what's really helpful about looking at the course listing this year, and also the revised CTS exam that came out, I believe, last year, I think in July. So right after InfoComm 2013 is a really revised look at, the skill sets that are required to be a CTS certified AV pro right now.
Yeah. No, there's also been rumors, and I don't know how true they are, so don't send me emails, that there's going to be a CTS network or CTS IT professional in addition to the designer and the installer.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And And I think I'd like to add one more thing to that, but I know that our friends at Tech Decisions are also media sponsors, but Control Concepts is offering a really great event for tech managers called Tech Talk, and that's on Tuesday, June 16th, I believe. And
June 17th. It's the day before the show opens, yeah.
Right. And that's going to be great because it's going to look at just some of these topics that we were just talking about, but from a perspective of the consultants, from the integrators, but also giving tech managers some more tools, tools of the trade is one of the elements, I think, that they titled it. But
yeah, no, it's actually a really cool event. At Steve Greenblatt and Mark Lavecchia from BMA also, and then it's at a brew house, so you get to have a good beer. If you like that sort of thing. If you don't, well then drink water. Craig mentioned this before, and last year, actually for a number of years, one of my favorite things to do is to go in the back 40 of InfoComm and actually other trade shows like it, and find the little 10x10 booth and the mom and pop shop, or the company just getting off the ground, or somebody that has a really interesting idea and they're not sure if they want to bring it to InfoComm. Last year's little hidden gem, for me at least, was Mersive Technologies, and Craig mentioned the fact that it was basically it's a robot on wheels with a video conference monitor, right? And it's somebody called it the it's the Big Bang guy, a Sheldon bot. So and it was cool, right? I mean, it ran over LTE, it ran over Wi-Fi or cellular. I mean, you can connect to it, and you can run it from your computer. So that was last year, at least for me, last year's little hidden gem. So Tom, we'll start with you on this one. Is there anything that maybe you know about or think that maybe people haven't heard enough about, whether it's a class or one of the pavilions or a get together, or maybe one of these little smaller companies that are presenting? What would be your find this year, I guess?
Well, can I take yours?
Sure.
Because Mersive, I'm thinking more of the Solstice solution that they have for collaboration.
I'm sorry, it's not Mersive. Good Lord, it's Beam. So go ahead. I totally screwed that up. It's not Mersive. It's Beam. It's a totally different company.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead, take Mersive.
I think Mersive Solstice is
yes.
Be an interesting. It's going to be sort of like a coming out party for that technology and just collaboration in general. I think there's going to be a lot of collaboration solutions that people end up talking about at the show. I'm sure I know Craig's seeing it. I'm sure Margot's seeing it as well. Companies, a lot of the case studies we get pitched nowadays have a lot to do with collaboration. So it just kind of seems poised to be in InfoComm, in which that's a category that people end up talking about a lot. In terms of hidden gems, though, not so much on the show floor. I think, along the lines of what Margot was saying about the Control Concepts event, InfoComm is also planning a lot of stuff targeted at end users for this particular show. There's a full day or maybe multi-day conference or series of training sessions on digital signage called Solution Summit Digital Signage, and one on UCC, Solution Summit UCC. And Tech Decisions is obviously very excited about that because they're actually aimed at end users. And we're interested in it, well, I'm interested in it as the editor of Tech Decisions, but also as the editor of Commercial Integrator, because it's an interesting trend that InfoComm's so interested in, educating end users. And we're going to be watching that closely, and I think that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on during this show.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, it's Suitable Technologies is the name of the company that had the Beam. So my apologies to both companies, but Mersive is cool stuff too. Margot, good Lord, save me here. What's maybe one or two hidden gems that maybe you're hearing about already?
I'm definitely going to look at the Biamp Tessera Forte, which is a little bit more of a scalable platform to the Tessera, which was launched, I believe, 2 years ago or last year. I'm pretty sure it was 2 years ago when they had their big launch. And again, looking at how much traction AVB is catching, and what are the products that are going to be guaranteeing connectivity between AV devices over a common LAN or WAN. So I think the hidden gems for me are just going to be the events, just to echo what everybody was saying. Definitely the Tech Talk event by Control Concepts on June 17th, and the Avenue Alliance Pavilion. Check that out for sure. And then also, on that point to the collaborative environments, I know that FSR has a really interesting collaboration solution called the Huddle View, and that was certainly a trend last year where we had the Huddle Rooms solutions. And I think it's becoming more expansive and more scalable, so whether it's higher ed or corporate environment, just products that are giving tech managers and systems integrators solutions to provide systems of scale without getting kind of blocked out from future changes or iterations, and something they can cost justify a little bit easier, and get that budget approval from whether the board or if it's the tech manager's perspective. And again, we have a lot of readers that are doing their own installs on smaller scales, so they're wearing many hats, and a lot of the departments are short-staffed. So the products that help them troubleshoot as well as plan ahead a little bit easier are well received.
Yeah. Mr. McCormick, what's besides the one that I've already butchered? What's one that you're looking forward to?
I'm interested to see how strongly InfoComm has attracted some of the international manufacturers and international end users. That was one of their goals in their strategic plan is push this this organization a little bit more outside of North America, and kind of make it a worldwide organization, something that everyone can be a part of and embrace, and so I'm interested to see how much that effort has kind of paid off. I know they're having events in other countries and other parts of the world and things like that, but I wonder how many of people from other parts of the world will actually attend this show, which is obviously their biggest show of the year. The other thing I want to see is another part of this strategic plan is talking about creating exceptional experiences, and I want to see kind of how that's going to play itself out, in the booth, whether there is something in some of these booths that I'll walk by and say, wow, I didn't expect to see that, and maybe that's in Microsoft, maybe that's in one of the other smaller booths, maybe somebody else has another robot that's better than the Beam or something like that. But just something that kind of everybody will be talking about it by the end of the first day, and if you missed it the first day, you'll feel like you're left out. I don't know if anything like that will be there, but I definitely want to find out. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, guys, as we wrap this up real quickly, and this is actually kind of twofold here. Mr. LeBlanc wrote a very nice piece on David Labuskes, the current head of InfoComm. The article asks a very good question, and so what has David Labuskes accomplished in the last year and a half since he took the helm at InfoComm? And my question to you guys as reporters is, what has he done, and where do we see not just InfoComm, the organization, but the AV industry going in the next 6 months to a year? So, Tom, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I took away from that interview was, it was kind of a personal perception thing. Everybody loved Randy Lemke, and he was a nice guy, a little tall for my taste.
He was tall. He was tall for everyone's taste, just for the record.
So, InfoComm, over the last few years has been interesting, and it feels like it's in a stage in which everybody's kind of taking a close look at what value InfoComm offers to their company and to their organization. And I kind of feel like, personally, up until recently, the answer was never you mind. It adds a lot of value to your organization. But I don't feel that way at all when I interviewed David Labuskes. I feel like he's very interested in asking that question himself. And he's very interested in talking to integrators about what they think InfoComm offers them in terms of value and what it should offer them in terms of value. And I'm really impressed with that. And that was the big thing I took away from the conversation that I wrote that article about was I kind of like the way he thinks in terms of sort of evaluating the organization and keeping the dialogue going with integrators. So I think it'll be interesting to watch that over the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that actually played itself out at I went to a roundtable and Tom was there too in Boston, and they had a session at the end where the attendees were talking about different pieces of the strategic plan that I was mentioning, and Dave was sitting right at the front of the room and reacting to everything that the people were talking about, and trying to get input from them on how to make InfoComm better for the members, not just better for InfoComm, better for the members too.
Well, yeah, and that's an important point, because let's be honest here, it's a trade organization, right? And it doesn't succeed unless it's pushing the trade. It's organized to support, unless it's pushing that forward. So, Margot, you'll have the last word on this. Where do you see InfoComm and the industry going in the next 6 months or a year?
Well, I definitely love the regional outreach. So I think it's today, or maybe it was yesterday, there's an InfoComm on campus, and it's actually placed on the MIT campus.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely integral for the direction of the trade organization, because the people that are really investing their day-to-day time and looking to InfoComm to do their jobs better, or to get more resources, or to just fortify their staffs, whatever reasons lead them to InfoComm, they're looking for, those immediate resources. So I think the more regional shows are great. We're participating with InfoComm at a InfoComm Connections event in October, where we're just bringing people together in more local and regional ways, so that the networking can happen, solutions can be discussed, and just putting people in the same space without the kind of chaos and hullabaloo of a big show. So I think that's one element that I really like, and I think the general trend of AV and IT, even though we overuse the word convergence, but I just think the synergies between the disciplines is something that they're addressing in pretty good, reasonable ways, again, with the idea of bringing allied trades together. And, one just specific instance, which I'll close with, is the 9/11 Museum in New York City, which just opened, recently this month in May. And audio and video is an enormous part, a huge element to the emotion and the storytelling and the overall user experience of this internationally, anticipated facility. And I just think that, something like that is a great reminder of why we're doing what we're doing, the importance of the tech manager's role, the systems integrator's role. And I think that InfoComm, moving AV forward as their title and as their call to action, and I think it's a really important call to action, to sort of move out of the silos and, more into that mainstream consciousness. And to that end, this month in June, one of our features is about large format projectors from digital projection, for example, and how they're transforming Broadway and turning, ordinary spaces into digital scenery in new and interesting ways. So something like the Broadway show Hedwig, for example, and Gentleman's Guide, and also I can name about 6 that are mentioned in the story, and it's a great piece by our writer Brian Nadell. And just looking at the ways audio and video are just really changing the face of commercial space and shared public spaces. And so InfoComm as a voice of the trade is, has a large responsibility, but also I think is moving about in the right, really reasonable ways of just making sure people have those knowledge assets and also the access so they can share and trade best practices and make more informed decisions. And I think that's really the priority, is how informed can our conversations be without pressure from manufacturers, but just having really good, candid, honest discussions. Yeah. So I'm liking it. I think that the show is going to be good in a refreshing way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of AV Week. I'd like to thank my guest, Tom LeBlanc, editor of Commercial Integrator and Tech Decisions. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find? Well, first of all, where can people find you on the show floor, and then where can people find you in general?
I will be running around the show floor. We do have a booth, the Commercial Integrator and Tech Decision booth in the North Hall, 462. Just follow us on Twitter, Commercial or Com Integrator, or follow the Tech Decisions Twitter handles, Corporate TD, K through 12 TD, Higher Ed TD.
Okay. And following you on Twitter, if you
and
want
following me, I guess, sure. LeBlanc Tom.
All right.
LeBlanc Tom is a good Twitter account to follow.
LeBlanc. All right. Also with us, the other side of Commercial Integrator would be Craig McCormick. Like I said before, my favorite Boston Red Sox fan. So, where can people find you, sir?
I'm also on commercialintegrator.com and on Twitter I'm at Craig McCormick.
Very good. And last but not least, Margot Douaihy, editor of AV Technologies. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I am on Twitter at AV Technology Mag, and we're also going to be in booth N105. Okay. So come say hello. We'll be running around, but it'll be great to see you. And I think there's also an AV tweet up also. I'm not sure. I have that on my calendar, but
I have heard rumors of such a party. Apparently, it's taking place in our press room, so I guess I should know about this. No, Margot's very kind. We are having a tweet up, so come by and say hey if you want, if you have the time. June 18th, the first day of the show, between 4:30 and 6:30. Room N, as in Nancy, 217, N217. We also have a booth, so we're actually between Commercial Integrator and the fine folks at New Bay. We're at North Hall 217. So our room is N217. Our booth is N217. I think they did that on purpose because I'm not the brightest person in the world. So I only have one thing to remember, N217. But no, that's brought to you by a bunch of really cool sponsors: Draper, Vadio, Advanced AV, AMX, Middle Atlantic, ASK Proxima, Audinate, AVI Systems, and Innovad. So yeah, that's and AV Help Desk and Sennheiser is giving us some really cool things to give away. So if you've got the time, you're coming to InfoComm in Vegas, come by room number N217 between 4:30 and 6:30. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on Twitter, but go by the website if you would, please. I just forgot the name of my website. AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. I told Tom earlier it's been a long week and it's only Wednesday. You'll find this program and a host of others. We have a new AV app show, Pico Pros, that looks at really small projectors, a new Lighting Guy show, our EdTech show, our State of Control. So check it out if you would, please. AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv. All of our podcasts brought to you by our fine folks at Middle Atlantic. MiddleAtlantic.com. What great systems are built on. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for listening.